In our call last week, I will reject all attempts to weaken Canada.
As the United States prepares to impose sweeping tariffs on Canadian exports, tensions between the two allies have reached a critical point. But something unexpected has happened. Canada, often viewed internationally as the quieter and more diplomatic neighbor, has taken an assertive and calculated stand. Prime Minister Mark Carney, a seasoned economist and former central banker, has responded not with alarm, but with resolve, declaring that no deal is better than a bad one. It's a statement that carries significant weight, especially when billions in trade and over 2 million Canadian jobs hang in the balance. The root of this dispute stems from Washington's plan to enforce a 35% tariff on Canadian steel, softwood lumber, and auto parts industries that account for over $35 billion in annual exports. The proposed tariffs are not just economically disruptive, they signal a deeper shift in how the United States now manages its trade relationships, particularly with close allies. For decades, the U.S. was considered the primary champion of free trade. Today, its approach feels more transactional, less predictable, and increasingly unilateral. Canada's decision not to yield under pressure reflects more than just economic calculation. It is a test of sovereignty, principle, and long-term vision. The immediate response to this crisis unfolded in an unlikely place, the quiet lakeside town of Huntsville, Ontario. Typically known for its cottages and summer retreats, the town was transformed into a secure political hub in late July, as key Canadian leaders gathered for what resembled a national strategy session more than a policy retreat. At its center stood Carney, a figure known for his credibility in financial markets and now evolving into a statesman willing to gamble on principle. As deadlines from Washington loomed, Carney was unshaken. His message to provincial premiers and federal ministers was firm. Canada will not sign any deal that compromises national dignity or future competitiveness, even if it means enduring economic pain in the short term. Carney's leadership has proven to be both methodical and visionary. As he reminded leaders gathered in Huntsville, effective negotiation requires more than concession. It requires boundaries. Carney rejected the idea that fear of economic retaliation should determine policy. Instead, he offered a clear-eyed alternative: prepare for short-term disruptions and build an economy resilient enough to thrive beyond them. His belief? That Canada must modernize its internal trade, reduce reliance on the American market, and use this geopolitical pressure as an opportunity to redefine its economic independence. The foundation for that transformation lies in Bill C-5, the One Canadian Economy Act, which received royal assent in June 2025. It is one of the most ambitious economic packages in Canada's recent history. The law unites two key goals: eliminating interprovincial trade barriers and fast-tracking large-scale national infrastructure projects. These projects include critical mineral railways, energy pipelines, port expansions, and highways designed to connect remote regions and export hubs. The law also allows for automatic recognition of provincial standards across jurisdictions, effectively turning Canada into a single economic unit rather than a fragmented federation. Some critics, including Indigenous groups and civil society organizations, have raised concerns about the speed and scope of the legislation. They argue that the Building Canada Act component of Bill C-5 did not include adequate consultation with First Nations, potentially undermining Indigenous rights and environmental protections. Lawsuits are already being filed. However, Carney has responded to these concerns by emphasizing the urgency of the situation. In his words, "The future demands action, fast, unified, unapologetic." For him, the risk of economic stagnation and increasing dependency on the U.S. outweighs the cost of legislative delays. The potential consequences of the U.S. tariffs are massive. Analysts at Yale's Global Budget Lab estimate that Canada's GDP could decline by over 2.1% if the full tariffs are implemented, representing the most severe impact among all U.S. trading partners. Key industries are especially vulnerable: $14 billion in steel exports, $23 billion in auto parts, and $6 billion in timber. Over 2.3 million jobs are tied directly to trade with the United States. These numbers are not theoretical. They reflect the livelihoods of Canadian workers, businesses, and entire communities. And yet, Carney's strategy is not based on panic, it is a long game. Rather than retreat, Canada is choosing to pivot. In the weeks following the tariff threat, more than 80 countries reached out to Ottawa with interest in expanding bilateral trade agreements. From Southeast Asia to Africa to the European Union, Canada is being seen as a stable, rules-based trade partner in a world increasingly dominated by uncertainty. As Carney said in a recent press conference, "Our phone hasn't stopped ringing. The world is looking for alternatives, and Canada is ready to lead." This global outreach is not merely opportunistic. It's part of a deliberate plan to decouple portions of the Canadian economy from U.S. dependency and instead build partnerships with countries that value predictability and mutual benefit. Carney's vision includes reshoring critical manufacturing, sourcing machinery from Europe, tapping into Asian markets for technology, and expanding trade in energy and resources with Africa. At the same time, Canada is building new infrastructure to reduce bottlenecks in domestic supply chains. Pipelines are being proposed using Ontario steel, mineral rail lines are under construction, and coastal ports are being expanded, all funded in part through new national infrastructure programs enabled by Bill C-5. Of course, no strategy comes without risks. The Parliamentary Budget Office has warned that a prolonged trade conflict with the United States could cost Canada over 180,000 jobs by early 2026. Meanwhile, on the U.S. side, American households could see average losses of up to $2,700 per year due to inflation caused by increased tariffs. Despite these consequences, neither side seems ready to back down, at least not yet. As this drama unfolds, three possible outcomes are now being closely watched. Scenario 1. No deal, full tariffs. The United States enacts the full 35% tariffs. Canada retaliates in kind, targeting key American exports and accelerating internal reforms. The result could be a full trade war with both economies facing supply chain disruptions and inflation. But this could also push Canada faster toward economic independence and new international alliances. Scenario 2. Temporary truce. International pressure, particularly from the G7 and business groups, convinces the United States to pause or revise its tariff plans. Negotiations continue, but the uncertainty still drags on investment and business confidence on both sides of the border. Canada continues to build its alternative trade networks. Scenario 3. A compromise deal. Canada signs a deal that prevents tariffs but includes conditions that could weaken its long-term sovereignty. In the short term, markets may stabilize, but critics warn that this would sacrifice Canada's strategic leverage and global independence. Whichever scenario unfolds, the underlying theme remains the same. Canada is asserting its right to decide its future without undue pressure. Carney's approach is not about winning a media war or pleasing international headlines. It is about creating a nation that is less vulnerable, more connected internally, and able to stand on its own when allies become unpredictable. This moment is a turning point in Canada-US relations. The friendship remains, the economic ties are still vast, but the balance of power is shifting not through confrontation, but through strategy. Canada is demonstrating that strength does not always lie in compliance. Sometimes, it lies in knowing when to walk away from a deal that no longer serves your people. In Carney's words, "We don't chase deadlines, we chase dignity." The lesson for the world? Economic sovereignty is not something to be traded away for short-term certainty. It is something to be protected, expanded, and redefined. So, what do you think? Should Canada stay firm, or should it seek compromise to avoid economic shocks? Is this a bold vision for the future, or a risky bet in a volatile world? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.